People would call us baby murderers. Who were they to force me to remain pregnant? I could feel that Irish people knew in their hearts that forced pregnancy was wrong. I was over the moon when the results were announced. The next day felt like waking up in a new Ireland.
On the 26th of May 2018, it was right here in Dublin Castle where the announcement was made that Ireland had voted overwhelmingly in favour of repealing the 8th Amendment. The 8th Amendment to the Irish Constitution gave an equal right to life to a pregnant mother and her unborn fetus. The success of the Repeal the 8th campaign can be attributed to a group called Together for Yes. Its co-founder Alva was also a founding member of the group that successfully campaigned for the legalisation of same-sex marriage in Ireland. This year, its founders were named on Time's 100 Most Influential People in the World list for their role in the campaign.
The Together for Yes campaign, lots of people think that, one fine day in March we all just got together and said, yes, let's go. But of course, when you're trying to take on a really major issue as repealing the 8th Amendment so that women could access abortion, when you're taking on an issue of that kind, really you've got to think for a long time in advance. Quite a number of pro-choice organisations had worked together at that time to try and make the law a wee bit less draconian. Very often people say, well, why do you think you won? I think we won because we ran a very good campaign, because we worked very hard at it, because there were incredible young people out there fighting for it on the ground, and all kinds of reasons, but also because people felt they could trust us. One of the most important impacts of the Together for Yes campaign was that it gave a tremendous boost to, I think, everybody's thinking in the North and in the UK about the need to legislate for abortion in the North. Not that it hadn't been happening, but when you get a boost like we did from marriage equality, they got the great boost from Repeal. That has been really important, and I think we're very, very happy and pleased about that. It's very difficult to say at the moment exactly what will happen. It was a tremendous breakthrough. After the death of Savita Halappanavar in 2012, we said never again, and we meant it, and we think that the people of Ireland agree with us.
This is Savita. After she developed complications in her pregnancy, she repeatedly requested an abortion but was denied. She died here at Galway University Hospital after being told by a nurse that Ireland is a Catholic country. Her death was a catalyst in the abortion rights campaign. I spoke to a midwife who worked at the hospital to find out what has or hasn't changed since Savita's death.
So I did some of my training in Galway University Hospital, so that would be the hospital that Savita Halappanavar died in. No, I definitely don't think that we were ready to have abortion introduced on the day that it was introduced. We weren't really trained in either the medical or psychological aspect of providing abortion for women. It was very much skimmed over in college, and it was something that wasn't really spoken about too much at work. To say that our resources were stretched is definitely an understatement. We would be looking after up to 11 women by ourselves, and then on top of that any babies that they might have. So, if there was anything out of the ordinary, we really didn't have time to give women the emotional care and support that they needed anyway. We barely were able to get by, to be honest. Like, the words are just mad, and I don't think there's the capacity there to be able to look after, something as emotional as a woman going through an abortion. I don't agree with the 3-day waiting period at all. I think it's just another means of kind of putting a leash on women, or putting like another rule and another punishment for women that we've already had in Ireland for years. I just don't see it as necessary.
Grania has since left midwifery because of understaffing at Irish hospitals, but here at Eldon Family Practice in Dublin, Dr. Murphy shares Grania's views.
I joined Doctors for Choice on the basis of some research that I did about 8 years ago, and it showed that there were a variety of harms that happen women on account of forcing them to travel abroad to access healthcare services and abortion care. And I also researched GPs' opinions about abortion, and it showed that the overwhelming majority were pro-choice and only a minority supported the kind of constitutional prohibition on abortion. So I joined Doctors for Choice, and that was also at the time that Savita Halappanavar died. So there are 3 GPs in the practice that are trained to dispense the abortion pill, and I suppose we've supported several dozen women over the past few months through, I suppose, what is their own unique circumstance when they've arrived. And it's been incredibly humbling as a doctor. I think women have been really appreciative and kind of surprised. I think some women didn't know that there was a service available. They found the My Options phone line very supportive. I'm very proud to have been able to provide that service. There are problems, of course, as well. The 3-day wait period unquestionably has been very damaging and very distressing to many women. It's a terrible insertion. It places another barrier and another visit onto a woman, and I don't think that's acceptable. There are some areas in the Midlands and some areas in the northwest of Ireland that still have few GP providers, and in those situations women have to travel, get buses and taxis and then another bus, and they have to do that twice, and they have to seek childcare for each of those occasions and to get time off work. And it is so distressing to see what this 3-day wait period has done for them, and it's not right. It's actively harmful and distressing for women. There's absolutely no medical grounds that we can stand over it, and it needs to go.
I spoke to Ellen, who covered the referendum as a journalist and went undercover for The Times.
I think the Irish media really needs to ask itself how it managed to be so behind and how it managed to almost miss the most incredible grassroots female-led campaign in the history of Irish politics. We started a campaign against unregulated crisis pregnancy agencies. At the moment in Ireland, anybody, even if you're an anti-abortion activist, can set up a crisis pregnancy agency, pretend that it's pro-choice and pretend that it's an objective source of information. So we started with an undercover investigation on the Women's Centre on Berkeley Street in Dublin, which is still operating today. Our undercover investigation found that so-called crisis pregnancy counsellors working there were telling women that abortion causes breast cancer, that it would turn them into child abusers, that they would lose the use of all of their organs, and that it could affect their ability to get pregnant again in the future. All of those things are absolutely untrue. But you have to bear in mind that these are being said to women when they're highly confused, they're living in a country where abortion isn't legal, they're trying to prepare for a journey to the UK, and they don't know that the person across from them is a liar with a vested interest in terrifying them out of the choice that they want to make. And I suppose it's unfortunate that with all the strides that we've made over the last couple of years in Irish healthcare, that those unregulated crisis pregnancy agencies are still free to operate and target women without breaking a single Irish law. Practically speaking, we did get what we voted for last year, but some people probably didn't get what they voted for, and there's certainly some parts of the law that have already emerged to be super problematic. The 3-day waiting period immediately springs to mind. I mean, a woman having to ask for an abortion on a Monday and not being able to access it until a Wednesday is not backed up by any medical evidence at all. It completely flies in the face of trusting a woman's decision, and I suppose most tragically of all, it has a really detrimental effect on the women in Northern Ireland, where abortion is still banned in almost all circumstances, who either have to book accommodation for 3 nights in Dublin or make 2 trips up and down. The fact of the matter is, even though it's now a legal health procedure at the other side of the border, it's probably still easier for those people to fly to England or Wales to access a legal termination, and that's certainly a problem. I also think that some people are kind of pointing out now that 12 weeks is quite conservative compared to other countries. But I suppose at the time it seemed super radical, because we were moving from a point where abortion had been illegal in almost all circumstances, and a free, safe, legal law was absolutely unthinkable. There is going to be a review of the law in 3 years' time, and I'd be interested to see what kind of country we are then, and what kind of changes people will want to make to that legislation.
Take the hope and the lives of our most vulnerable.
But what does this mean for the people who are still pro-life? The anti-abortion side continue to hold their rally for life in Dublin every year. But protesting can become problematic. Catholic and anti-abortion groups have been protesting outside clinics and hospitals and interfering with the women who use them. One crucial difference between legal abortion in Ireland and the UK is that some clinics in the UK have safe zones outside called exclusion zones, where protesting is illegal. Here is an exclusion zone outside a clinic in Ealing in London. Lawyers for Choice are a group that advocates for exclusion zones to be rolled out in Ireland.
Lawyers for Choice have provided, guidelines or a template for exclusion zones at bylaw level, so that would be local council level. So local councils can include exclusion zones, say outside hospitals or GPs, that you couldn't cause an obstruction. And it is a solution where there is no legislation. Our mandate was really to kind of educate the public about the legal issues, because this was a legal issue. There is a need for exclusion zones, and I think there's a way to balance that in a way that doesn't infringe on people's rights to hold, vigils or whatever you want to call it. You can do that if you want, but you don't get to interfere with somebody's right to access their healthcare or intimidate people. And I think that's a competing right that needs to be balanced and balanced effectively.
Definitely. Something you touched on there, which is
the difficulty now, since the 1st of January, is for particularly medical and health professionals dealing with the system, which was not really prepared for this, not really trained for it, and which had a completely different mindset. And the case of Savita Halappanavar actually demonstrated how loath medical professionals were to, even when a woman was visibly dying, they were afraid to carry out abortion. So it's a bit like turning a great big liner around. You're saying, no, you've been cruising in that direction for decades and centuries, and now we want you, in the space of a day, from the 1st of January to the 2nd of January, to turn right around. And you can't do that. You can't turn that great big liner around in a day. But I do think that considerable strides have been made, and I have to say that I'm very admiring of the medical professionals and the health professionals who are often working under great stress and strain, and particularly those who were so committed to ensuring that this legislation would translate into services. What the Abortion Support Network in the UK have told us, that the numbers of women coming from Ireland have dropped quite really significantly, which indicates that obviously those women are having abortions here in Ireland. I really do think that it is making a real difference to women's lives.
Prior to legalisation, 9 women left Ireland every day to have an abortion in the UK. 3 more would order illegal abortion pills online. Quiva has been interviewed about her experience, but because she has a distinctive accent, for the purpose of this documentary, she asked that her interview be voiced by an actress.
When I discovered I was pregnant, I was in an abusive relationship and I experienced coercive control over my life and body, so the decision to have an abortion was an easy one. But I was terrified of the climate of criminalisation that was in place in Ireland at the time. I ordered the pills online. It was a Friday. I spent the weekend in fear. I was sick with worry that the pills would be seized at customs, but they arrived on Tuesday. I was so relieved. I don't regret the abortion. I regret needing one, but I had been using contraception, so I'd done all I could to prevent it. I regret needing an abortion in a country that wanted to control my body. I could not afford to travel abroad. I did not want what happened to me to happen to anyone else. People would call us baby murderers. I could feel that Irish people knew in their hearts that forced pregnancy was wrong. I was over the moon when the results were announced. We're still not fully there, so repealing the 8th needs to be step 1 in what will be a long road. I know how awful it is not to feel like you have any choice in whether you should continue a pregnancy or not. No one should deny another that choice. It sickens me that for some people in Ireland now, that is still the situation that they are in.
There is set to be a review of Ireland's abortion laws in 2 years' time. This review could see the 3-day waiting period eradicated, exclusion zones legislated for, and the decriminalisation of doctors should they need to provide abortion after the 12 weeks. But in Northern Ireland, abortion is still illegal and has been since 1861. If the Stormont government refuses to sit before the 21st of October, a bill will be passed that legalises both same-sex marriage and abortion. But as it stands, women in Northern Ireland could face life in prison if they have an abortion, and every single day women are being denied their reproductive rights.
Whatever choice she makes, for this mistake she'll pay.